Hey everyone, it's Samantha, and I'm so excited to share with you today my client's incredible transformation. So, do you ever have this client that ever comes in and they spur things on you last minute? Well, she's one of those, and I love her dearly. But we had originally scheduled to do a brand new install, and originally, our game plan was to just make her bright blonde and keep doing what we're doing. But she surprised me at this appointment and actually decided that she wanted to start the transition of blending in her natural gray hair in with the bright blonde that she has. So I was so up for the challenge. We have not been doing root color on her for forever. I was going to say for a long time, but I've always weaved her. I've always tried to blend in her blonde, but I've always overweaved her to make her as blonde as can be without doing a bleach and tone, basically. So I always would pack in her foils, make her so blonde, and then ice her out. So today was a completely different change for how I foil her normally. I did a lot of low lights. We cooled her down. We added contrast, and we added contrast within her extensions as well. And the neat part is with her natural gray growing in, she was pretty white right here around the hairline. So I knew when I wanted to do my root melt, I didn't want anything too dark because I didn't want to add a lot of depth on her side since she's already so white, and she's actually fine with that. And as you can see, she definitely has depth and a lot of contrast still in her hair, the darker gray tone. But I knew when I wanted to melt her, I was only going to do like a level 7 or an 8. And with my low lights, I kept them at a level 9 because I wanted to play on the safe side and I didn't want anything overly deposited and too dark. If anything, I wanted to add some icy bits of a subtle contrast into her hair and make sure she liked it first before we do a full send. So maybe next time we might go darker, but I thought this transformation was perfect. So regarding the foil placement, I foiled doing what I would call like the herringbone highlight. So if you were ever trained trained at Sassoon, it's how they would typically foil the hair, but I'll explain to you. The foiling kind of goes up to the side of the head, and then wherever the client naturally parts, you would come in at an angle. So a lot of times they would angle the whole mohawk section, and they call it herringbone because I guess it's like the scales of a fish, the way that the angles are placed.
Ready to boost your profits behind the chair? Visit awealthyhairstylist.com today.
In the front, all of this along the hairline is so customizable. So you could either pack in your foils if you want like a really bold money piece. You could add some space if you want some depth. You could not apply it directly at the root. You could apply it like lower, away from the root if you want a bigger regrowth. So I knew since she already had the regrowth, I knew I wanted to throw in a few more highlights. I knew I wanted to brighten up around her hairline, but I also had to add contrast. So I did low light quite a bit up the sides since she already was so blonde. I did have a couple highlights, but I mainly highlighted right here around the hairline. And so when I do my herringbone, for her, she naturally styles her hair down the center. So I did my natural part, and then I had probably 4 to 5 foils angled this way. And I usually will find that I will stop my foiling based on like the round of the head. And so I always look to see what on my client up here wants to fall forward in their face. Because the last thing you want to do is do some foils right here, and then you didn't account for their cowlick or how their hair falls. And then you have all this hair that comes forward and then just covers up those highlights that you did. And you realistically should have actually foiled a little bit further back than you thought. So always take the time to pull the hair forward, see what wants to fall along your client's face, and then be aware of that sectioning. But once I do my angle, I actually then will continue up the side all the way up to where my client naturally parts with my foiling. And with transitioning a client's color darker, Don't be afraid of your low lights. Adding in the contrast is really going to help add that definition in the hair, especially if they are so solid and so blonde. So for sure, my top foils that lined up with my root part were low lighted. I think my first like 3 foils were low lighted to add some depth and like a blonde in between, and then a couple low lights and then blonde. But she already had so much blonde, so I did not want to overdo it. And normally when she would come to me, I would highlight around the hairline, but this time I actually low lighted. So I did bring some low lights underneath to break up the strong line of demarcation that she had from me originally like packing in all of her foils. So that was like the initial game plan for us to add some contrast into her hair, brighten up the highlights around her face, add contrast into the back. And then for her extensions, I did use like an icy blonde, but I needed a contrasting weft as well. So a few of those wefts we did have to low light, and I wanted those to stay icy and cool to blend in with kind of the gray hue that we were giving her. So that was a whole project in itself, but that turned out so great. So I kind of want to continue to show you some more photos of her hair. All right, so now let's talk formula. So as you can see, she is still really, really blonde. So naturally, she is pretty light, even though her dark does look dark contrasted to the gray. But I personally just weave her with 10 volume and then I add a prey into my bleach. And if you haven't heard about a prey, it's a treatment that goes into the bleach, which helps not break the hair apart and helps prevent damage during the bleaching process. And what's nice with a prey is it doesn't slow down your bleaching time, whereas there's some other treatments that you could put in your bleach that help with the process of lightening. But a lot of those you usually have to bump up your developer, so that way it can kind of meet in the middle with the processing time, because some other companies it slows down the processing time, so you have to do a higher developer. But this one, it's great. Whatever developer you want to use, it doesn't affect it whatsoever. So I do bleach and 10 with a prey, and then for her low light, I did 9N and 9T, and I did 2 to 1, so 2 parts 9N. Which an N is like a blue and T is titanium, so it's a silver, like a silver blue. And I did that because I definitely wanted something cool and icy, and even if it did look a little bit gray, I was fine with that because I wanted something that was in that realm and that tone that was going to match with the natural ash gray tone pigment that she had in her hair. So 9N to 9T, 2 parts of 9N to 1 part 9T, and I actually use 6 volume developer. And so that way it's creamy, it can deposit, and it was great. And the reason why I did a level 9 for her lowlights, one, I wanted to play on the safer side. I wasn't quite sure how dark her hair would grab. I have some other clients that are gray transitioning that are naturally a little bit darker than her, and I've used 8T and 7T with 8N and 7N, and sometimes those can get very dark. And so I knew I did not want an extreme contrast on her. I wanted something that was subtle and soft that was going to add some contrast into her hair, but like I said, keep it subtle and soft. So the low light was 9N and 9T, 2 to 1 ratio for that. And for the extensions and for her hair, the extensions, I didn't root my wefts, and that was one thing that I kind of decided not to do this time, only because, one, because of her hair density. Sometimes when you have clients that are very, very fine on the top, and if you add a very, very dark root weft, you can sometimes see through the hair and see that root that you created. So sometimes having a lighter root is more beneficial than a darker root. And this is one of those instances. And also too, I knew that I was not going super dark on a root melt. So I decided to keep her blonde wefts bright actually at the root. And I knew I was toning them, so I didn't want to do a crazy dark root melt. And yeah. And oh, for the low lights on the extensions, look at my notes because I have a little client card. And so I keep track of all my clients' formulas. So that way, when they come back in, I could revisit and figure out, what I did. Did it work? How long did it last? Do I like how it faded? And then I could easily tweak my formula from there. Because when you see so many clients a day and they come in and they change their formula, I always write everything down. So it's so important to keep track and record of that. So that way you can make adjustments accordingly, like whether it's something they liked or they didn't like, or they noticed how it faded this way, but they wanted it this way. So it gives you a one up with making adjustments, because sometimes when you don't write things down and you're just kind of winging it, which a lot of people do, and that's totally fine. Me, I'm so type A. I want to know precisely my formula and what I did. So that way, one, my brain won't have to think sometimes so hard, and then I could make adjustments to my formula that I already seen it mixed up. And then for consistency purposes too, I have so many clients that if they love it, perfect, I got it, we're good to go. I could send my assistant off to mix. The formula's already there. But for the low light on her extensions, I did 7N and 9T equal parts on her low light. And that was beautiful. It matched really perfectly, which you'll see her after soon, to what she has naturally in her hair. And then we tone the wefts 9V in shades EQ. And the 7N and 9T is also shades. And then her low light, I did use Renkin shades as well. So let's go check out her after. Can we just take a moment for how beautiful this transitional color looks? Her roots are still icy and cool. You could still see a hint of sparkle of her gray, which she wanted. I did not want complete 100% coverage. I wanted her gray to come through, but I still wanted to add that depth and that melt on the side, because remember, she had all blonde, all the way up to her root except for like an 8-week grow out. So the color on her roots blended in with the low lights in her hair is so, so pretty. And I'm so happy with how it looks. And I am so excited to see actually what it will look like when she comes back in for her bump up. And for the color on her roots, so once she was done processing with her lowlights and highlights, my assistant and I took her to the bowl. We shampooed her. We did well a post to kind of comb through and close down the cuticle. And then I sectioned her where her hair naturally parts. And I did my signature teardrop. It's kind of like rounded in the back. Teardrop shape for my melting technique, which I do have quite a few YouTube videos on how I do my root smudge. So that is what I did on her, but I did drag her roots down a little bit longer, and I did let her process for about 20 minutes at the bowl with her root smudge. And the key was we did towel dry her really, really well because I wanted a good amount of saturation. The only thing that I did not really root smudge is I did leave out a sliver of her natural hair along her hairline. Because I wanted her, she was solid white. So I still wanted that to look really nice when she pulled her hair up. So I did still root tap going all the way up on her sides. Just when I did closer to the hairline, I wiped off as much product on my brush. So I had very minimal product to apply towards there. So the amount of product that was going towards her hairline just kind of lessened. So she had more of the depth at the top and internally, and then it kind of got lighter on the sides. And for her root melt, I did 7N, I did 8T, and 9T with 6 volume. And the 8T, I decided to add a little bit of the 8T because I wanted it just a stronger control and a little bit more depth. I didn't want to do a full 7T. I was afraid it was going to make it a little too dark. And so it was kind of my way of easing into it to see how her hair would take. And I'm not going to lie, at the bowl, it looks so scary. I mean, it looks like it's black and blue, and you might have a little panic, but it's okay. You know, you got to let it do its thing and let the hair color process. And it turned out beautiful. I was so happy with it. And then we added 2 rows of hand-tied hair extensions, and those were hand laid and custom blended and cut to blend into her hair. So here we have her gray transitional color from being all over blonde. So thanks so much. If you have any questions, drop them below, but don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you guys back here soon.